Welcome to the Great Loop Radio podcast, brought to you by America's Great Loop Cruisers Association. We're dedicated to sharing Great Loop information and inspiration with those actively cruising, planning for, or dreaming about a Great Loop adventure. I'm Kim Russo. I'm the director of AGLCA. Today we're going to continue our Story of Our Loop series. So we are thrilled to bring some of our gold loopers in to tell you about their experiences, and we'll bring them in just a moment. But as always, I first want to recognize and thank our Admiral sponsors who support AGLCA at the highest level. They are Curtis Stokes and Associates, Great Loop Yacht Sales, Passage Maker Trawler Fest, Skipper Bob Publications, and Waterway Guide Media. As always, we encourage our listeners to support these businesses that support the Great Loop. And with the business out of the way, I want to officially welcome Chris and Beth to Great Loop Radio. Thanks for joining me today.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, it's great to get to talk to both of you. Let's kind of start off, just tell everyone a little bit about yourselves and why you decided to do the Great Loop.
All right. Well, so we live in Crystal River, Florida, which is actually on the loop. And we had we've been here for about 30 years and really enjoy it and like the area. And why did we decide to do the loop? Well, it was I was sitting in my office one day and a friend of mine came over and brought me a book, and it was Honey, Let's Get a Boat. And so he goes, hey, you might be interested in this. So I started reading it. I'm like, check this out. I never knew anything about the Great Loop before, and it kind of got me kind of really excited about it. So, and this was, gosh, how long ago?
Our kids were, I think, like 6 and 8 maybe years old, and now they're 21 or 22 and 20. So that's how long ago that we got that book. And we thought about taking the kids on the loop for a long time, but then that never really worked out. So we did it when the last one left home. She went to college and was gone for a couple of years, and we decided to do it then.
Yeah, so both of you, were you both immediately on board, or was there either of you that was reluctant?
Well, I was on board right away after I read the book.
He was on board, and me having the kids, I was like, I don't know, should we? I didn't want to take them out of school, and I was just nervous about that. I didn't think I would do too well at homeschooling.
That's a hard choice.
Yeah, looking back, I think it would have been great, but yeah, that was my main thing. But I was definitely captivated by the adventure part of it. I wanted, I love that aspect, just taking a great adventure. So yeah, when it finally came around, we took it more seriously after the kids left home. And
well, we had told so many people we were going to do it.
True. We're like,
we have to do
it now.
Otherwise we're losers.
Well, so what do the kids think about it now? They're grown now. And I know, I first learned about the Great Loop from my parents, and I thought they had lost their minds because I didn't really understand what it was. I've shared that before. But so as adults, are the kids like, oh, I wish we would have done it, 10 years ago when we were still home, or where do they stand with it?
They have said that, yes, but they were just so happy that we finally decided to do it.
So we shut up about it.
Because we had talked about it pretty much their whole lives. So yeah, they're happy for us. I don't think as they became adults, they didn't really like living on the or spending the night on the boat, being on the boat that much. And we had gotten a camper too when they were teenagers, and they didn't really like that. So they're more they came and met us on the loop a couple times, and they stayed in the hotel, and they really enjoy the traveling aspect, but they don't really like the boat. So
well, and I would imagine one of the reasons they stayed in a hotel because you did not have a boat that was probably great for accommodating guests. Tell us about the boat that you chose for the Great Loop.
Yeah, so we looked at, again, we started this thing a long time ago, looked at a lot of different types of boats, and then I'm not sure how we found it. You might have found it, didn't you, Beth?
We looked online. We were looking online, and I think we saw the boat. The first time he showed it to me, I was like, ooh, no, I don't
Yeah, so it's a Camano Troll.
Camano Troll.
So I think maybe first when you look at it, it's a little bit ugly, but we're like, oh, this is really cool. So we went and looked at one, passed on it, but gave us a good idea. So we looked at more. and we kind of lucked out. It's only a 31-foot boat, so it is good for two people. And several of them have done the loop too. I
Mhm.
don't think Camanos there were, but a fair amount. We
Yeah,
ran
we
into a
saw a
few of
few.
them. And I believe there was or is two couples that are doing it on that boat
Mhm.
somewhere.
I don't know. Yeah.
We heard. I don't know how they do it. It would seem a little small to me, but I guess it would work. But we like the choice that we made
It's a
on the boat.
great boat.
Yeah.
It's really perfect actually for the loop
Yeah.
for two people.
Give us some of the specs, if you would. You mentioned it was a 31, but tell us a little bit about the engines, the number of staterooms, the number of heads, that kind of thing.
All right. So it was really the first time that we had had a larger boat at one time that had a couple of diesel engines in it, but I decided I wanted one engine. So that was the first thing. It's a 31-foot boat. It's actually only 28 feet at the water line, but it's the way it's laid out. It's got a 10.5-foot beam, so it's not super narrow like boats of that 28, 31-foot length, but
One stateroom.
one stateroom. It's got a wet head in it, which is not great. And we took a lot of showers, of course, in marinas and stuff, but it works. Has a decent galley in it, and then the salon up top also has a lower station. So another thing that Beth wanted, one of her requirements was an upper station, for sure, and really just for the Statue of Liberty. I think so. When we went
And
by the
I didn't
Statue of
even,
Liberty,
yeah.
that we could see it from up there. So that was
Well, I
another,
knew we'd want to spend some time up
yeah,
there.
cool thing about it gave us a lot of extra room. And then when you're, two people kind of in a smaller space like that, at least you can kind of get away a little bit, feel like you're separating yourself a little bit from them anyway. But single engine, really good on fuel. I think we only used like 1,500 gallons of fuel,
Oh,
something like
wow.
that, for the whole trip. Um, yeah, what was it? Yeah, 1585 was how many gallons of fuel that we used. Had a generator. We spent 2 years working on the boat before we actually took off, and we just kind of customized it, fixed things because I didn't want to have to work on it while we were, traveling and having fun.
Mhm. So, Chris, you were pretty specific that you wanted a single engine. That, of course, is a perennial debate, single versus twins. Why did you want a single?
I wanted the single engine because I'd had twin diesels before, and a lot of times there wasn't as much room, was the first thing.
Mhm.
Uh, Plus, it just doubles everything. It doubles the maintenance, the oil changes, um, and everything else you have to do with it cost wise. And we wanted, and I know it can be done with a single engine, and it was a learning curve too. It does have a bow thruster on it, which did make docking a little bit easier. Um, but I had seen some videos of the Chesapeake Cowboys, and these guys dock those boats with single engines. And they do it fast, and I said, if they can do it, I can do it.
There you go.
But mostly because of the maintenance aspect of it and the cost,
Yeah.
just made a huge difference.
Yeah, absolutely. And that fuel burn, the number of gallons you used is probably half of what we used on our loop. So if you look at that fuel bill, that's a nice thing.
Yeah.
Um, I don't think we covered when exactly you did the loop. So kind of give us your start and stopped dates.
We left on Valentine's Day, February 14th of 2023, and we got back December 1st of 2023.
And during that time, I like to ask about cruising preferences and cruising style. And by that, I mean, how often do you plan to anchor versus marina, and how fast do you like to travel, and how many miles per day, and that kind of thing. So do you have some of those stats for us?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was another thing getting used to is we'd had faster boats before. We would cruise on our other boat from here in Crystal River to Tarpon Springs, and it was 3 hours. Well, trawler speed, it's 8.5, 9 hours.
Mhm.
So we had to kind of get used to that. So, I think our ideal day would be a great day is 35, 40 miles, something like that. travel maybe 3 days in a row, and then just take about 3 days to, at a really kind of a neat stop, and spend some time, and, kind of catch up with things.
Laundry and
Yeah.
groceries and that kind of thing.
Mhm. And I know in kind of in your pre-interview, you mentioned that you had hoped to anchor more, but ended up in marinas more than you had planned. That is typically what I hear from a lot of loopers. What contributed to you deciding to be in marinas more than you thought you would?
That was easy. Once once we started meeting people, we didn't want to be away from the party. We it's like, if everybody kind of meets and you're together, and I know some people did it and they would dinghy back in, but it was just, there was so much fun with being, once you had a little group of people that you kind of like loop frog with, you see them and you don't see them for 3 or 4 days, and it was just, that was the best part, was really getting together with people and talking about where you've been or where you're going, and getting ideas of what we can visit and see, and just doing stuff with other people was really the contributing
Well, and
factor.
also we had that very small wet head shower on the boat,
Yeah,
and my preference a lot of times was to get to the marina and be able to kind of get a shower and see the town, walk around the town, the little town.
stretch your legs a little bit.
Yeah, which we could do in the dinghy, and we did. We anchored out 75% of the time.
No.
I mean, I'm sorry, the opposite.
Right.
We were in marina 75%.
Right. And that's still a substantial amount of anchoring, because you were gone for about 10 months, it sounds like. So, 25% of the time at anchor is still a number of nights at anchor. Was there
And we
anything?
enjoyed anchoring, yeah.
Is there anything that you equipped the boat with to make those times at anchor more comfortable?
Yeah. So we set it up where we didn't have to be plugged in to electric if we didn't need it. I put some solar panels on the boat, which really helped. Put an inverter, and then I would say one of the best things we did, which not just for anchoring, but we put a satellite dish. We had the Starlink on it. Really made a difference, because especially in some places, we had good internet just
Pretty
basically
much the whole time.
Yeah, pretty much everywhere. And we set it up with, I put a bridle on there. We made sure we had a good anchor, and all the planning we did, and especially going on the forum and looking, at everybody else's questions and answers, kind of really helped us prep for what we didn't know what we were going to do.
You mentioned a dinghy, which on a 31-foot boat can be a little bit more challenging to be able to store it somewhere. So tell us what kind of a dinghy you had, and how did you transport it from place to place?
Yeah, so that was an evolution too. So we started with, we got when we bought the boat, it had a folding boat on it. I'm like, yeah, I don't want a folding boat. So we put the dinghy on it. I put my first set of dinghy brackets on. I didn't like it. We got something else to where it was easier to use, so that we would use it. Because originally the way I had it set up, I'd have to kind of grab we'd have to get the motor, drop the dinghy, put the motor on. And so finally we set it up where everything was in one piece and we could just drop it and go. And that kind of came in handy a lot. And I can't see, honestly, for me, we had to have the dinghy for the trip. It just made it, you don't have to, but it definitely made a big difference, especially thinking about South Carolina, Georgia, and some of those places where you almost have no choice. Yeah, you have to kind of anchor out.
So when it wasn't in use, where was it on the boat? A swim platform, or did you have a swim platform?
It was suspended over the swim platform, which again was kind of a compromise, because that was really the easiest way to get out of this boat. If you're familiar with them, it's got a door in the stern, so we would have to kind of climb over the side, which was okay. But again, it sort of limited the swim platform. We're kind of agile. A couple of times I went in the water, I just kind of opened the back door and slid underneath the dinghy and dropped in the water.
What?
Well, when I had to swim.
Oh, okay.
You're like, you don't remember that?
So we've been talking about, some of the more practical aspects and the boat itself. I want to take a quick break and play a message from one of our sponsors. But when we come back, I want to talk a little bit more about kind of the intangibles, like the highlights and what this trip has meant to you. So if that sounds good with you both, we'll be back in a moment.
Great.
Prop Talk is an Annapolis-based company founded in the summer of 2005 by active Chesapeake Bay boaters. The company produces Prop Talk Magazine, a monthly newsprint magazine focused on Chesapeake Bay powerboating and the lifestyle surrounding boating on the bay. Every issue of Prop Talk is distributed at more than 850 carefully chosen and closely monitored locations throughout the Mid-Atlantic. Prop Talk's coverage goes deep rather than wide, and the magazine celebrates the people, places, boats, personalities, and events that make the Chesapeake one of the world's premier boating grounds. Thanks for reading and supporting the Chesapeake Bay's boating magazine. Dawtaw Island, created by nature and reserved just for you. A hidden gem of the South Carolina Lowcountry, Dawtaw Island is a private community catering to the active lifestyle. Golf, tennis, pickleball, croquet, bocce, 33-acre nature preserve, and the full-service Dawtaw Island Marina. Just outside of historic Beaufort, South Carolina, and a short ride to Charleston, Savannah, and Hilton Head. Reserve your overnight stay and call ahead to arrange use of the island's amazing amenities. Marine Tech Services is on site to cater to all your repairs and maintenance. Destination, Dawtaw Island. Visit dawtaw.com. That's DATAW.com. We're back on the Great Loop Radio podcast. My guests today are Chris and Beth. They are gold loopers, which means they have completed the loop. Chris and Beth, we've been talking about your boat, but I didn't ask you the boat's name and where it came from.
The name is Pauhana, and it's Hawaiian. And Chris picked it, so you say what it is.
Well, we've had this Hawaiian thing for some reason. I don't know. We've never even been to Hawaii, but we one boat was Makakoa, one was Tiki Time, and one was there's another one.
Aventura, but that's
no, I can't remember what. Big Kahuna. So this one was Pauhana, which means done working. So we thought that was kind of appropriate that we were at least done working for a year. And so that's why we chose that name. It
kind of means like done working for the day, like happy hour time.
Yeah, right.
So in Hawaiian, so at the end of the day, you say Pauhana, time to wind down the day and have a couple drinks out on the tiki deck.
That's really cool. I've seen the boat name so many times and didn't know what. That's why I like to ask that question. Most of the boat names are so creative or have a really neat meaning behind them. So I love that about Pauhana. I did not know that was what it meant. So you obviously, since you read the Honey, Let's Get a Boat book early on, you planned this for quite some time. So you probably had a lot of expectations. How did the reality of the trip differ from what you expected it to be?
You want me to answer that? Okay.
You go ahead.
Okay. Well, I think just like with any trip, you're always excited. And then sometimes when you got in those long days, it would get a little bit, would kind of wear on you. But I don't know. I felt like I kind of knew what to expect, but at the same time, every day was kind of like being a goldfish in a bowl. You kind of go, oh my gosh, look at that. Oh, look at that. There's always something to see that, other people have seen it, but it was the first time we got to see a lot of this stuff. And so, I mean, I don't know. I felt pretty prepared.
Yeah,
honestly.
I think we prepared well. I think probably the thing that I didn't expect was to miss my family as much as I did. I felt like, and it's not like they don't even live at home anymore, but I think just being on the trip made me, we did go longer times without being able to see the kids and everything. So I think that took me a little bit by surprise. Like I didn't realize that I would feel that way as much as I did.
Mm-hmm.
But the cool thing about it is there's so many. We've got kids in Virginia, and then we have some in Florida. So we stopped in St. Augustine. A couple of kids came to see us when we were in.
Which was funny because we had been traveling for 2 months, but we were still only 3 hours away from home.
Yeah, exactly. That's true, right?
It's funny how that works at trawler speed, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. So a lot of people, I asked this question, and the question is, what are some of your favorite places on the loop? What were some of the highlights from that aspect? And most people, it's hard to answer that question because most people say, there were so many highlights and there were so many places. But in your pre-interview, you said hands down, Lake Michigan was your favorite, which was just a great answer just because it's so specific. So tell us what it is about Lake Michigan, even though it's huge and there's lots to see and do on Lake Michigan, but what about it made
Yeah.
it easy for you to identify that as your highlight?
I think for me, we kind of started out in Mackinac Island, which to me was just so different and unique and neat. You know, I just loved it. And then the clear blue fresh water, like we're in fresh water that you could, um,
It
you
was
know,
like being in the Caribbean. I didn't expect
yeah,
it. That
yeah,
would
we
be
didn't
so,
expect it. I had
yeah.
never been there. And then I had never been to the Great Lakes. So for me, I'd love to go back and explore the Great Lakes a little bit more. And then just the little towns in Michigan, like you'd get to the next little town. It was just so cute and
Yeah, I mean, every little, and we kind of wish that we'd gotten to the other side too, but every little town is, maybe 35 miles, 40 miles, so a day trip away, and just all sheltered. You could get off the lake, and for most of them, and it was just fantastic. I
yeah,
mean,
it's
we
neat.
loved it. I mean, and a lot of great breweries and shops and things to see. Just it was just we
Of course,
really really
I
liked it.
also liked North Carolina, like the outer. We didn't go to the outer. Well, yeah, we did. We went to one island that was in the Outer Banks, but that little area of the East Coast, we really liked too. Canada, of course, we'd never been to Canada, and or yeah, you had, but that that part of the trip was I thought really cool. He was a little on edge because of the rocks.
Yeah, yeah, the
So
rocks in Canada they
a
freak me out. Plus, you talk to somebody else and see what kind of problems they had. I mean, we
lot
didn't
of
have
people
any.
losing props.
We we didn't have any real. I mean, it's very well marked. So I think a lot of what I was feeling was not really there. It was just we're just so used to not having to have those obstacles and not have them so well marked. But it was still it was nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and you were absolutely worrying about something that most people worry about. And I think, my boating here in South Carolina is a lot more like what you're doing in Crystal River than what any of us saw in Canada. So,
Yeah, you're right.
yes, the rocks can be concerning when you're used to, if you hit bottom, it's a soft, gentle kind of thing. The
Right.
rocks are a whole different story. Um, and I agree with you. The water on Lake Michigan is such a surprise to those from the southeast and the salt water where it's not that crystal clear. Just absolutely stunning. So I can certainly understand why you appreciated Lake Michigan.
Yeah.
Um, to go along with the highlights, of course, there's always some challenges. So tell us about some of the bigger challenges you faced.
Well, I mean,
Hmm.
some of the challenges, I guess, just stuff you figure out too, is on a smaller boat having enough, and this boat has a lot of storage, so it's another thing I really like. But having we're traveling with some people who always had plenty of extra boxes of cookies and whatever, and we didn't necessarily have all that room for that. So I think that was probably one challenge. The other challenge really just being with somebody day in and day out and not really being able to get away from them if you want to, not like in a regular civilian lives or whatever you want to call it,
Mhm.
where you go to work and you're away and you come back and go, hey, great to see you. Now it's like, oh, you're still here. Okay. So
Well, and for me, it was a little bit tough at first, just having to take direction all the time because he's more the boater. He's a boat captain and he knows pretty much everything there is to know. So he was constantly giving me direction, which is fine, but it did get kind of a little bit, okay, all right. You can tell me to do it or tell me how to do it, but don't I don't necessarily have to do it the way, your way or your
well, that's
specific.
a matter of opinion, but
Right, right. It was working through that, and that's a good thing. I'm not saying it was a challenge, but it wasn't a bad thing. It was just trying to figure out how to really deal with each other in a different way um than we're used to. Like I don't normally take that much direction from him in my everyday life, but
no, but
um
but by the time we got about at least a third, a little over a third of the way, she was indispensable. So when she left at one point, because she had wanted to go back, had to go back and see her her mom.
I had a little family emergency.
Yeah, and so
So
my daughter got on the boat. Well, she's got some training, but then I had to train a new crew, and so it was harder. I didn't realize how much I missed this person that already knew what to do when it was time to, drop the anchor or pull into a slip.
See, I love that because things that both of you said were so insightful. But Beth, I really think, a lot of us are not used to taking direction from the other.
right.
And, certainly can respect the level of experience. You're right. It's almost a dichotomy that you're used to not being given so much direction, but also recognizing that you absolutely need that direction at the moment.
Right, exactly.
A lot of loopers have described it as like, even if you've lived aboard before, it kind of being constantly on the move like that takes a couple of months to really find your groove. And it's exactly the kind of thing that you two are talking about. Um, the constant give and take of learning something new and learning to rely on each other. But so it's a challenge, but it sounds like you certainly overcame that.
Yes.
Yeah, and that is the thing too. The trip is so different in every part that you go in. There are a new set of skills that you either have to use or learn.
Mm-hmm.
There were things that I'd never gone through a single lock. Well, and then everybody knows by the time you get done with this trip, it's pretty much nothing. I mean, you're not even thinking. I remember being nervous going through the first one, and then when we were pretty far into the trip and seeing people, they go, "We just started. Oh, we're gonna go through the lock." I'm like, "Okay, it's not as bad as you think." And then you just kind of get used to it, but it's just you learn so many great skills, and then have to or take what you know and sort of bend it a little bit for the particular waterway that you're in.
Yeah. Well, and that's why it is and feels like such an accomplishment to finish the Great Loop, because you have had to learn new things and step outside your comfort zone. And if it was easy, it wouldn't feel like such an accomplishment. So
Exactly.
Right,
Yeah.
true. Very true.
And I know one of the things you also listed as a challenge was weather, particularly in a smaller boat. That can be a challenge trying to make that go or no go call. And I know that you were at a facility at Shady Harbor when a pretty severe storm unexpectedly blew through. So tell us about, how you learned about the weather and how to predict it as best as is possible to make a go or no go decision.
Well, that's the thing, and I've got, we had to figure that out, and sometimes we had to kind of figure it out with the boat too, and going, okay, yeah, we thought this would be okay, but based on this, it's not. So then we kind of developed our go or no go thing. But I have to hand it to Dave Fuller, because we met him early on. And so I'm going, I think we can go. And Beth goes, you need to call Dave. So I was like, all right, Dave, how do we figure this go, no go thing?
Well, his idea was to come up with parameters that you go by every time. Like if it's more than 2-foot waves predicted, then you just don't go. Right. And so we had to come up with our parameters. And yeah, we called Dave for a little bit of advice and came up with our parameters, and we always went by that, but sometimes the weather was just wrong. Like they said it was going to be one way, and you get out there and it's totally different.
Yeah. So the parameters are helpful though. And we definitely recommend them because it takes some of the emotion out of trying to make that decision and, really wanting to go and choosing weather that probably isn't ideal. But I'm glad you brought up Dave and the go, no go decision, because one of the things Dave does so well in mentoring others for the Great Loop is help with weather information. And as you know, he helped a lot this past Gulf crossing season with, whether people should, not telling them that they should, but helping to provide weather details to help them make the decision on whether they should take the 170-mile jump straight across from Carabel to Clearwater, or whether they should take the Big Bend. And of course, you're from Crystal River, which is along the Big Bend route. And so you saw more people doing that last year, thanks to favorable weather on that route and to Dave's guidance on that. But tell us a little bit about Crystal River and, why it's a great place to boat and why people should do the Big Bend so they can come visit y'all.
Well, it is. I mean, I think it's, people take a lot of side trips that are off of the loop anyway. So you can almost look at it like it's a side trip. And it does definitely shorten. I would not be looking forward to doing.
Sorry about that.
I would not be looking forward to doing a 21-hour crossing, so doing it this way and doing the Big Bend route, and and now it's not necessary for every boat, because there are some parameters. You're going to get into a lot shallower water, but enough people do it, and checking with the harbor host, we made a point of, we're a harbor host here, of trying to get people to come in here and try to give them the best guidance we could too, because there were some people I told them, I don't know, I don't think you ought to do it, or others I said, yeah, you should, but this is what you need to watch out for.
But it's great here. We have manatees. You can swim with the manatees. We have the Kings Bay is a beautiful body of water where you can anchor out and easily dinghy to shore. We have a cute little downtown area, so it's a neat place.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you
I would recommend it. I would recommend it to anybody. I
yeah,
think,
you shorten that route getting down to Tarpon Springs and Clearwater. Plus, you get a little fresh-water flush for your engines when you come in there.
Right. There you go.
Yeah, he has a GPS route that he gives people to just follow. Follow the GPS route. That way you're not. That way you don't run into like a little shallow area or whatever. But I mean, it's well marked. So.
Kind of like we were just talking about with Canada and Georgian Bay. It's well marked. You just need to stay in the channel. But up there, if it's rock, if you miss,
Right.
Right, and we have a hard bottom here. So
Yeah.
this is when you're anywhere from Steenhatchee down to here, Hernando Beach, you do have to be careful.
Mhm.
But we saw a lot of people come in here this last winter, and it was awesome. I loved it, man. I love seeing people coming and really experiencing the part of that we like of Florida.
Yeah.
Well, Chris, and you did mention at the beginning of that part about coming into Crystal River that there were some people you advised against it. Based on what? Who might be listening and be thinking, am I somebody he would advise against it?
Mostly draft.
Mm-hmm.
If you're over 4.5 feet, you have to be careful, because during the winter time, which is typically when you're going to be coming by here, our tides are going to be, a foot lower than they normally are. And so that's gonna make a difference. Where in spring and summer, it's not as big a deal. So that is the main thing. And that also, back to that, when we talked about our boat, one thing that we like about our boat is it only draws 3'4", and it's a single engine, so it has a protected keel.
Mm-hmm.
And then it gives you a lot of assurance that you're not going to have to worry. But again, if you time the tides and you're careful, Crystal River is not hard to do.
Yeah, excellent. So one of the things that you said in your pre-interview that you gained from doing the loop was the confidence that life doesn't have to be lived conventionally. Tell us about that. What does that mean to you?
Well, we live our lives every day, getting up, going to work, and suddenly it was a change for us.
Mm-hmm.
It was we weren't having to think about that anymore, and then you meet so many other people that are doing this, and you're like, wow, this is going on all the time.
Sometimes
What the heck?
they sell their house. They don't have a dirt home. For us, we took a mini retirement.
Right. Yeah.
So I mean, to me, I think that is a little bit unconventional. Sometimes you don't think about doing something like that, but yeah.
Yeah, we did.
leap.
We met so many people that don't have a home anymore, and you kind of think, really, well, how's that possible?
It is, it's very much a coloring outside the lines kind of thing, for sure. That's one of the reasons I love that quote from you. You also said that by far the toughest challenge was just leaving the dock and getting started. So based on that, what would you say to somebody who's kind of new to this idea, and is trying to either decide if it's for them or trying to finish up their planning so they can go? What advice do you have for them?
My advice is, do your planning and just know that you're not going to be prepared 100%, but just go. We set a day. When we said, all right, we're going to do this, we got a big white, what we call it the big board, which we do it for any time we're planning stuff, a dry erase board. So we got the dry erase board out. And we said, all right, we've got X number of months, and this is what we have to do each month. And if we don't get to this point, then we got to go back here, and so on. until we got through it, and it worked because we planned it out, and we said, this is the date we're leaving,
Yeah, we set
no
a
matter
weekday.
what.
Mhm.
Well, unless the wind's blowing over 15 knots, and we'll set it back a day.
So that is fabulous. I also want to thank you too for staying involved with AGLCA as you have finished the loop. And Chris, as you know, you traveled to Tallahassee to meet me there and testify before one of the committee hearings at the state capitol there when we were working on the anchoring issues, which will continue to go on into next session. But I just wanted to give you a public shout out for that because we really
Well, I
appreciated your
appreciate
help
that.
with that.
Well, it's important that I'm not saying that it's impossible to do this trip without AGLCA, but I wouldn't do it. And just
No.
the biggest thing probably, especially from last year, were the lock closures and all the work that went into that. And I know there were people that weren't members, but we felt fortunate that we had that information, that there was just so much information out there, and the harbor host, and all it just makes it a 10 times better trip, and it makes you feel a lot better about thinking that you can accomplish this.
Yeah, this is a group like no other, and the camaraderie is really the top
Yeah.
thing. And you two exemplify that. So thank you again. Thanks for being here, and thanks for sharing the story of your loop with us.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
And thanks to everyone who has listened today. We'll be back next week with another episode of the Great Loop Radio podcast. Until then, safe cruising.